Om. Shuklambaradharam Vishnum Sasivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasanna ధ్యాయేత్ సర్వవిఘ్నోపశాంతయే. సరస్వతి నమస్తుభ్యం వరదే కామరూపిణి విద్యారంభం కరిష్యామి సిద్ధిర్భవతు మే సదా. అసతో మా సద్గమయ తమసో మా జ్యోతిర్గమయ మృత్యోర్మా అమృతంగమయ. ఓం శాంతి శాంతి శాంతి. మాతృదేవో భవ, పితృదేవో భవ, ఆచార్యదేవో భవ, అతిథిదేవో భవ. ఓం గురుర్బ్రహ్మ గురుర్విష్ణు గురుర్దేవో మహేశ్వర గురు సాక్షాత్ పరం బ్రహ్మ తస్మై శ్రీ గురవే నమః. ధన్యవాదాలు. నమస్కారం.
ఓకే, ధన్యవాదాः. Dear students, welcome for the next series of lectures, and we start with Upanishads, followed by Darshans and Vimana Shastras and Bhagavad Gita by a very senior person from our organization. He is Dr. CSR Prabhu, and he is the chairman of Visva Yoga Vidyapeeth. He is the founder of Vidyapeeth and Hyderabad branch. And he is the director research of KMIT College, Engineering College. And he was the DG of NIC. He also worked in Tata Motors, CMC, and TCS earlier. He authored many research papers, and he wrote around 10 textbooks.
16.
And now it has become 16. So when I knew it is 10. So such a fast rate in 2 years and the 6 books. So at this rate, we'll have more books in the near future. And he is a visitor of University of Melbourne, Australia. And he has undertaken many special projects, and is a member of many professional bodies like ACM, CSI, and CCICI. He was awarded many medals. He got many awards, and he is basically an engineer, MTech, PhD in computer science. They're very serious and knowledgeable person, and many of you know him. Otherwise, this introduction is only for those who haven't met him so far. In any case, I have shared this CV in the group. So let us request Prabhuji to start his lecture on Upanishads. Prabhuji.
Namo Brahmadibhyo Brahma Vidya Sampradaya Kartribhyo Vansarsibhyo Mahadbhyo Namo Gurubhyaha Sarvopaplavarahita Prajnanahana Pratyagartho Sohamasmi Brahmaivahamasmi. Good morning to all of you. I thank Professor Babu to have introduced me. I wrote 16 books, out of which 12 are in IT. So in recent times, 2 new books have been added from the old 10. That is Big Data Analytics and also fog computing. Remaining are in yoga and philosophically, Vedic science research, Sanskrit research. So it is not that 4 books have come in 2 years. 2 books have come newly, but the others were not counted in the previous because they were not in computer science, but they were in yoga and Vedic research. So what he forgot to introduce me is that I am the academic director of this course. I designed this course, and most of the lectures are being given by me on various topics like yoga and Upanishads. And we also had many lectures by outsiders from Banaras Hindu University and Sri Ravi Prakash Arya. So friends, there is no course in the world today on Sanaatana Dharma except what we are delivering now. So I'm very, very happy to have finally materialized this dream of mine, which I had for many years. I've been working for the last 5 years in designing this course and organizing, and I was finding difficulty to organize it, though I prepared the contents. And thanks to Prabhakar Garu and Babu Garu and Vishalaksh Garu, the VSS has come forward, and we are able to execute this course with around 100 persons. It is a record by itself. Please realize that there is no such course anywhere, and that too online, and that too so many people. It is a great effort by VSS. Prabhakar Garu is the spirit behind VSS along with Babu and Vishalaksh Garu. So they have been working very hard to enroll people like you. And I have focused only on the course content and delivery. And the organization is entirely by VSS. So now we have seen on the first day, I have given an overview of Sanaatana Dharma in my lecture, which was like a keynote address on the first day. And second day, it started with Vedas because the entire Sanaatana Dharma starts with the Vedas themselves. And Ravi Prakash Arya is a renowned scholar of Vedas from Arya Samaj background. He has given you an overview of the Vedas from a classical perspective, in the sense from a Sanskrit perspective, or from the Arya Samaj perspective. And I'm going to give a scientific orientation to the entire course, as I told you. What is the main difference between Sanatana Dharma and other religions? Other religions have no scientific basis. They will give cock and bull stories without any proof, and they ask you to believe by force. It is not like that here in Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma. Everything is based on reason, logic, and proof. Because one of the major components of Sanatana Dharma is Nyaya Shastra, Nyaya Darshana, Tarka Shastra, and so on, which is nothing but logic. So everything is logical and can be questioned, and there is a proof. Without a proof, nothing will be acceptable, nothing will be received, nothing will be recorded. So now first I will talk about today's agenda is I'll talk about 4 topics. We have 1.5 hours roughly. The first is an explanation of the scientific nature of the Veda and the Vedic knowledge, including Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita and Shastras we are covering in our entire course. The second will be on the knowledge models, or maybe first I will talk about the knowledge models, how, because I wrote a book on knowledge management also, how the knowledge models have evolved over the millennia from the Vedic knowledge model to the modern virtual knowledge model. I will touch upon that first and then go into the scientific aspects of Vedic knowledge and then go into the core science, physics of quantum physics and relativity, which bring out the Advaita from a scientific perspective. The same Advaita was brought out from a logical perspective by Adi Shankaracharya and Badarayana, whom we prostrate with our hands. They are here with us to guide us in this studio of the Bhagavad Gita University, in which I am a director. So the fourth aspect will be an overview of the Upanishads, and if time permits, I will cover the Ishavasya Upanishad today itself, otherwise we'll do it tomorrow. So in this series on Upanishads, I will cover Ishavasya Upanishad and Mandukya Upanishad, and also Taittiriya Upanishad, who all give different perspectives of the ultimate truth of Advaita as propounded by the Rishis and the Vedas and the Upanishads and Adi Shankaracharya and Badarayana Vyasa. So first I'll talk about the knowledge models. What you have to realize is that knowledge is internalized, externalized, and socialized. And that process is called knowledge management. This definition is given by Nonaka, the Japanese scientist who gave the first definition of what is knowledge management. Of course, advanced knowledge with experience and intuition will become wisdom. So wisdom management is internalization of wisdom, externalization of wisdom, and socialization of wisdom. So wisdom is far superior to knowledge, and knowledge is far superior to information, and information is far superior to data. All these data, information, knowledge, and wisdom, they all have the management requirement of internalization, externalization, and socialization. Data management is the subject of computer science, information technology. Data becomes information in context when it has importance and implication and consequence and value. That is information management, management information systems, etc. You know about it. Then when information is enhanced or evolved into a level of knowledge, knowledge can be tacit knowledge or explicit knowledge. Tacit knowledge is inside the experience of human beings, like our grandmothers. Explicit knowledge is recorded knowledge, like in our scriptures or in textbooks. So knowledge dissemination, knowledge transfer from generation to generation becomes very crucial factor. So when you use certain technological media, like say once upon a time we had the floppy disks, information and knowledge was recorded in that, and then after some time floppy disks became defunct. So now we have pen drives. So it is a very difficult process to transmit knowledge across thousands of years. So the Vedic model of knowledge management was a different model from what we have today. They had a concept of Veda as a repository of knowledge. So keep on adding to the repository knowledge of all types, including wisdom, knowledge on all subjects. It can be subjects of nature, it can be subject of spirituality, it can be subjects of psychology, whatever topic. And the Veda had that model where the topic or subject was given the name Devata. And the Rishi and Chandas. Chandas is just a meter in which the knowledge was recorded. Instead of prose, it was poetry. And the Rishi is the mantra drashta who could visualize that abstract knowledge and wisdom in his deep state of samadhi, which is nothing but divine knowledge, therefore it is apaurushaya. So this was the Vedic model of knowledge and wisdom, which was transmitted from generation to generation. by oral means, by hearing. That's why it's called Shruti. So by chanting poetry, hymns, mantras, all poems in Vedas are called mantras, not slokas. Slokas are from later Sanskrit texts. So by chanting correctly the Vedic mantras, including the pitch, Udatta, Anudatta, and Swarita, there are 3 pitches. In Samaveda, we have 7 of them. So in the Vedic model of knowledge, it was information, knowledge, and wisdom was conveyed through the chanting of the mantras of the Veda, from the teacher to the student, from generation to generation. So this way, there is no other model which is more successful in time than the Vedic model, which has survived for more than 20,000, 30,000 years, in spite of the losses, but it has not been distorted. What is very important for you to realize is that the Vedic mantras which are chanted today in any temple or in any Veda Pathshala are exactly same as they were chanted, say, at the time of Rama or at the time of Krita Yuga or even earlier. And not even one sound will change. Not even one frequency pitch will change. Sahasrasirsha Purusha Sahasrakshas Sahasrabhat. So the same thing continued because of various techniques used like Jata, Ghana, and so on. Pada, Krama, Jata, Ghana. So these techniques were used for encrypting the sounds and knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge means science. But what is science? Science is nothing but knowledge. Knowledge of real world and nature. And the subjects of science are the subjects of nature, the entities of nature. In fact, the word with has 2 derivative meanings from the root with jnane and with satayam. Vidyate means it exists. Veda is knowledge as well as knowledge of existence. So whatever exists, that is nature, those topics, subjects are called devatas. So Veda therefore is a repository of science because it is talking of only subjects of nature. There could be gross subjects like Bhu Devata or Agni Devata or Vayu Devata, which are well known to us, or it could be abstract subjects like Medha, Saraswati, and so on. So now this knowledge was encoded into the mantras with pitches, encrypted so that there will be no disruption, and transmission took place from generation to generation. Well, friends, please realize that what I am telling is not a hypothesis. It is a reality, because we know our Vedic scholars who chant Veda today are chanting with proof that same thing which was chanted ancient times by Shankaracharya or by Vyasa or by Rama or even earlier in the Krita Yuga. It is exactly same, but it's a different matter that we lost 90%. So 90% of the Veda is lost due to time, due to ravages, due to invasions, due to destruction. But this 10%, which remains, itself is so vast. It's the largest literature in the world. The only comparison is Mahabharata, which is 1 lakh verses, which is known as the Panchama Veda. As you know, the Vedas were an infinite, Anantahi Veda, infinite repository of knowledge, which was edited by Veda Vyasa Badarayana, who is on our behind us here. So he edited, that's why he is known as Vyasa. It is a title, it is a functional role he played. So he edited it, divided into 4 parts. That does not mean he created it. Ruk, Yajus, Sama, and Atharvana. And these 4 parts have been carried on ever since he edited them and created the 4 dynasties of Paila, Jaimini, Vaishampayana. Paila, Vaishampayana. Paila is for Rigveda, Vaishampayana for Yajurveda, Jaimini for Samveda, and one more person, Sumanta or something like for Atharvaveda. So these dynasties were created for the lineages, parampara, from the by birth, which is Gotra, or by discipleship, which is also another type of Gotra. So the schools of Veda were created and they continue till today. All of us have our Gotras. Mine is Bharadwaja Gotra. Bharadwaja contributed the maximum number of mantras into the Rig Veda. Rig Veda gets repeated in Atharvaveda and Samaveda to some extent. Yajurveda is prose. It is description of performance of not all prose, but some amount of prose. It is a description of process of karma kanda, yajnas and yagas. Then we have the Atharvaveda, which covers the medicine, Ayurveda, and also Tantra Shastra, mantras, various occult powers, chants for achieving various spells, including various war chantings for victory, various other tantric practices which came out of Atharvaveda later. Samaveda is the source of musicology and music. Gandharva Veda is its Upaveda. Rigveda is the core, the largest, which is the root of all other Vedas, and it comprises largely basic science on basic Devatas. It is a detailed analysis of the Devatas' functions and roles, that is Prithvi, Apa, that is Varuna, Agni, energy, and so on. Now, this knowledge model of the Vedas ceased to exist after the Atharvaveda. We don't have fifth Veda. Now, Mahabharata itself is known as fifth Veda, Pancham Veda, in a theological sense, but it is no fifth Veda as such. There are only 4 Vedas. Before Atharvaveda, only 3 were there. Trayi, because Bhagavad Gita refers only to 3 Vedas. But Atharvaveda came later, and it was appended to the rest of the 3 Vedas. Anyway, what I mean is, by the time of Vyasa, it was already there. That's why he categorized in Atharvaveda as a separate one. And it is something closely connected with the Iranians, Prabhu, Shukracharya, who migrated to Iran from Brahmavarta mainland, Haryana, Rajasthan area. That is Brahmavarta. Aryavarta is the entire North India, even up to the Vindhyas. Whereas Brahmavarta is a focus region. Around 10,000 BC, Bhrigu migrated to Iran via Gujarat, and his son Shukracharya was the guru of the Iranians, who called themselves Asuras. Now, this is the knowledge model of the Vedas. As you know, the second model of the knowledge after the Vedic model is the Upaveda, Darshana, Shastra model. So it is not that, everything will be put into one repository, but there will be compartmentalization of silos of Shastras, Darshanas, and so on. There are more than 20,000 texts in the entire Sanskrit literature, Veda Vangmaya and Sanskrit Vangmaya. All these Shastras, Nakula's Ashta Shastra is there. Ayurveda Shastra books, there are more than 2,000. And Yoga Shastra books are hundreds. And Jyotish Shastra, you have hundreds of books.
Sir, you are muted, sir.
No, I'm not muted. Am I muted?
No, you are okay.
Yeah. So the Shastra model came after the Veda model.
Sir, not audible.
Who is saying that?
Yeah, now it's clear. Now it's clear.
So the Shastra model came after the Veda model of knowledge and wisdom. I hope you understood what I'm saying. So after the Shastra model, we have the British model of the education system. In 1817, British government issued an order saying that all knowledge education in any language other than English is illegal and unrecognized, and it is banned. Can you believe this? The British government had the audacity to issue a order in 1817 AD that any education, any knowledge in Vedas or Shastras or Sanskrit or Telugu or Hindi or Tamil or Marathi is prohibited, and only English education model is the correct. And that's why today we are all speaking English. In fact, the person who introduced English, he gave a statement. Macaulay, if my education model is introduced, then after 200 years, we'll have brown Englishmen and women who speak, think, and behave like Englishmen. That's what is happening today. But all that model was a part of the plan to perpetuate the British rule in India. That has failed. They had to leave lock, stock, and barrel this country. So the English model of education, British model of education in which we have been brought up. My grandfather was the first one to switch over. My great-grandfather was a big Vedic scholar in a village called Kulluru, next to Tenali, Vemuru. He had a Veda Pathshala, and he told his sons to switch over to English, because that was around 1850. Because if you don't study English, you will not get a job, you will not get food to eat. So today we are trying to revive and recall our identity of Sanskrit and Vedas. I appreciate the spirit of VSS Prabhu Garu to revive the great glory of Sanskrit language. As you know, there are two Sanskrit languages. One is the normal Sanskrit, which we use for classical Sanskrit, for which Valmiki is the Adi Kavi, Ramayana is the Adi Kavya. But the other Sanskrit is Vedic Sanskrit, before Valmiki, before Ramayana. The Vedas themselves and the Upanishads included, they are in the different language, not in the normal Sanskrit, but around 30% different, which is called Vedic Sanskrit or Chandas in Panini's Ashtadhyayi. For every sutra of Panini, he gives a variation and exception for Veda. Bahulam Chandasi, Vibhasha Chandasi. He keeps on telling this because some of the lakaras are there only in the Veda. So that language, which is the Vedic language, which is the Vedic Sanskrit, is the original root language of modern Sanskrit, classical Sanskrit. As language evolved, it became classical Sanskrit by Valmiki's time. Because when Valmiki wrote Ramayana, Lava and Kusha sang Ramayana on the Chaurastas streets of Ayodhya. So the common folks who were standing there, they were able to understand. It is like Hindi today. So he wrote Ramayana in that language. Much later, Tulsidas wrote in Hindi or Awadhi, in the local language, which common people can understand. The same Ramayana. So the language evolves. Vedic Sanskrit, Sanskrit, then various other languages, Awadhi, Magadhi, and so on and so forth, which finally became Hindi by integrating. And of course, we have Bengali, Marathi, and so on. So the phases of language evolution keep on. Even today, the language is evolved. Grammar is a way to control the language. Coming back to the knowledge models. So today, we have a different knowledge model. As you know, it's not the British English knowledge model. Today, we have the internet, web-based knowledge model. We have the websites, we have emails, and we have the electronic books, and we have the audio-visual education, which we are going through right now in this virtual mode, virtual knowledge model. Thanks to COVID, we all became very comfortable with the virtual knowledge model. So I spoke about the knowledge models. Now I have also spoken about the Vedic knowledge model, and I have given you hints of what is the content of the Veda as in terms of knowledge of nature, Prakriti. The subjects of nature, existence, are called Devatas. Now, these Devatas are windows to the totality. Brahman is Brihat. The entire thing is called Brahman. So each window, Agni, Vayu, Prithvi, these are all Devatas window. Namaste Vayo, Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahmasi. So Brahman is the complete one, Brihat, whereas Vayu is one component, one window. Similarly, Prithvi, similarly, Savita, Sun, Surya, Savita Devata. Gayatri Mantra has subject as Savita, that is Sun. So how is it that the Vedic mantras, which are supposed to be extolling the Devatas, are also conveying the supreme knowledge of Brahman, Brahmajnanam? Vedas including Upanishads here. We'll come to the Upanishads in the next few minutes. Because this window concept, when you look at Brahman through the window of Agni, then you can see the entire Brahman as Agni itself. Agni Mide, Brohitam, and also Agni is everywhere. Garbho Soshadhinam, Garbho Vanaspatinam, Bhutasya Vishwasya, Agni Garbho Apamasi. If you look at the Brahman through the window of Vayu, Namaste Vayo, Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahmasi, Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahma Vadishyami, Ritam Vadishyami, Satyam Vadishyami, Tanma, and so on. If you look at Brahman in the window of Prithvi, then Bhu Devata, Prithvi Sukta is there, entire chapter. If you look at Brahman through the window of Prana, Prana Sukta in Atharvaveda, life. What is Prana? Prana is not one of the Devatas, basic Devatas, it is a combination Devata. Prana is, Prana Shakti is born out of the conjunction, Samyoga of Agni and Vayu. This fact is not known to most of the people. So Prana or life is born out of conjunction, Samyoga of Agni and Vayu. And there is a whole Prana Sukta about Prana itself. There is a Sauram on Surya, Savita Devata, whole chapter. So this way, the Vedas contain statements, including chapters explaining the structure and functions of individual components of nature or existence as Devatas, also giving a window into the totality, the Parabrahman. If you take Om, A, U, Ma, Ma is the last, A is the first, U is in the middle. So each Bijakshara, each Aksharam, A to Ma, is a Bijakshara, and it has got its existence in nature. Like Ra, Ra is Agni Bija. Agni, which we have just now discussed, is represented by Ra because Ra is actually heat. If you say Ra, 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 Ra 1000 times, you will get heat in your body because it is generated by friction of rubbing the air onto the palate by the tongue. Similarly, some other thing is cooling. Sha is cooling. So these principles, each Bijakshara is one Devata, and their combinations also create Devatas. Like Prana is Ra and Ya. Ya is Vayu Bija. So each Bijakshara is a Devata, and their combinations are combination Devatas. And from A to Z, A to Ma, is Om, that is Brahma. Have you understood what I said? This is a very crucial concept. I don't talk superficially or just give information. I'm going very deep. So the entire Brahman can be penetrated through any of these windows, A to Ma, any of these Devatas. And each window is opening up into the totality of Brahman, Om. So Om Ityekakshram Brahma, the Mandukya Upanishad declares. Now what I'm trying to say now is that the Veda is a knowledge model of describing nature with each Devata's detailed functionalities and structure. and roles, and also explaining the totality of Brahman, which is Om. Now coming to the Veda explanations given by our previous speakers, they were just very superficial. They were kind of summarizing the structure rather than going into the meaning, which is fine. This is what I wanted, somebody to explain all those aspects. But actually, the secret of Veda is much more deeper. Sri Aurobindo wrote a whole book called On the Veda, and he also explained in other texts. He has written a large number of texts. It is a very secretive, mysterious, occult science. And the Veda has broadly been categorized into two parts, the Karma Kanda and the Jnana Kanda. The Vedic hymns or mantras or Vedic mantra bhaga is to be chanted correctly by learning from the teacher for many years. I also learned Veda to some extent. So when you chant correctly and you perform that karma, which is yajna or yaga or agni karya, there are 16 havidyagas, starting with Agnihotra, Vaishyadevam, Somayagam, Chayanam. Chayanam is done for 40 days. Somayagam is done for 10 days. So in that process, the mantras which are to be chanted and the oblations to be given, the kauhi and medicinal plants and other things to be burnt at the particular procedure at particular exact timing. All that is karma kanda given in the Yajurveda and also in the Brahmana Granthas. Brahmana Granthas are like lab manuals for indicating who should do what in the yajna. There are 4 actors in the yajna. One is Hota, that is Rigvedic. Advaryu is Yajurvedic. And Udgata is Samvedic. And also Brahma. So all these roles which the particular Vedic Purohits, priests are playing, what they should do, when and how, is being explained in detail, not only in Yajurveda, but also in the Brahmana Granthas. So Samhita, which is the actual mantras which are chanted, Brahmana, and then we have the Aranyakas and Upanishads. This second half. Aranyakas means there are schools in the forest. All the Gurukulas are in forest, they are not in cities. Like even today, many IITs are like in forest. IIT Madras, IIT Bombay. They are not in heart of city, like IIT Delhi. So these Aranyakas, that means knowledge interactions that happen in the institutions, which finally evolved into Upanishads. Upanishad, the word itself means we are sitting together. Now we are sitting together with each other in the internet space, cyberspace. This is Upanishad, what we are doing right now. So sitting together, the teacher and the student, and asking questions and getting answers. That is conversation. It's called Upanishad. So Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka, Upanishad are the 4 components of the Veda. Vedic knowledge model, Vedic wisdom model. The wisdom part, which is Jnana Kanda, is categorized into Upanishads along with, of course, like Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad is Aranyaka as well as Upanishad. But they are merged. Samhita is just the chanting of the mantras. Brahmana Granthas are the operations, lab manual kind of things for the yajnas. Both go together as Karma Kanda. And Aranyaka and Upanishad go as Jnana Kanda. Is that clear? Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda. How the word Upanishad came and what is its main purpose? What is its main content and objective and scope is what I have explained as Jnana Kanda. Jnana of what? Jnana of the ultimate truth, along with already understood Devatas in the Samhita Bhaga. Upanishads don't discuss about Devatas. They assume that you already know what are Devatas, and the continuity of the knowledge system from the Vedas into Upanishads continues, because many Upanishads assume that you know Vedas. Like Chandogya Upanishad from Samaveda, it assumes that you have performed Vedic yajnas, yagas. It refers to some of them and then goes into the jnana, wisdom, Brahma jnana. So that means those who have already got trained in Vedic chanting and have performed yajnas, for them this Upanishad jnana Kanda is delivered, not for each and every person like us. That's why we cannot understand 100% what is being conveyed there. But because we are unauthorized entries, still we are trying to understand something. Because this model of unauthorized entry of understanding the Upanishads is not started by me. It is started long ago in Ramakrishna Math and in Chinmaya Mission and in Arsha Vidyapith and everywhere. Upanishads were taught independent of the Vedas because it is very difficult, if not impossible, for people to learn Vedas. It takes years and years of life. First of all, they don't even know Sanskrit, let alone Vedic Sanskrit. So a different model of interpreting the Upanishads directly without the compulsory requirement of having got the knowledge of the Vedas and the Yajnas has been adopted by Swami Vivekananda, Ramakrishna Math, Chinmayananda, Chinmaya Mission, everywhere. Even today it continues, even in ISKCON, everywhere. Because that process of Karma Kanda is extremely complex and expensive, and it's very deep, tedious, and it is not possible to follow. Most of the people today do not perform yajnas. In those days, yajnas were very common. That's why the environment got destroyed off late, because nobody performs yajnas on one hand, on the other hand, the pollution is destroying the devatas. In Pragati Resort, some yajna was performed, Vajapaya Somayagam, and they had perceptible results on the devatas, that is water, air, quality improved tremendously. And this is a proof of recent times. Many yajnas have been performed many places. Recently, somebody performed some yajna in Andhra area. And daily Agnihotra has to be performed at home along with Sanjavandram at sunrise and sunset. So that is Karma Kanda. Let us keep it on one side, because we are not delving into Karma Kanda. We have already dwelt into it yesterday, day before yesterday, and so on. Various elaborate Karma Kanda rituals, processes, they are all highly scientific methodologies. Some of them represent cosmology, the creation process, as Ravi Prakash Arya mentioned. They are representing or simulating the sequence steps in the creation of the universe. Well, they also have effects on the environment, on devatas, in nourishing them. The Bhagavad Gita makes it very clear. If you don't strengthen the devatas, then you are going to be doomed. You are a thief. So the environmental catastrophe which we are entering into is because we are not able to replenish the devatas. And that's possible. Yajna bhavita. That also Gita says, through yajna only, the devatas can be nourished and strengthened. So that entire process of performing yajnas, yagas is described in the Yajurveda and the Brahmana Granthas. And the Riks of the Rigveda are the original mantras to be chanted by the Hotas. And Samveda is musicology kind of Vedic chanting, which is Udgata, who shouts loud and sings music. And in every yajna, Samveda music is a part of it. Rama was very fond of Samveda chanting in the yajnas. So this was going on in a regular scale for thousands of years. Today it is very rare that yajnas are performed. But now the Jnana Kanda, the Upanishads which are attached to the Veda, please realize this. Those who learn chanting of the Veda, some of you might have learned, I also learned. To some extent I learned, I didn't learn the entire 12 years. So when they learn chanting of the Veda, say Yajurveda, along with the Veda, they also learn Upanishads attached to it. Chanting. They chant the Upanishads also. Because all Upanishads are part of the Veda. That's why they are called Vedanta, but the end of the Veda. Why it is called Vedanta? because it's the end of the Veda, that is Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka, Upanishad, the fourth. So every Upanishad is given the affiliation to particular Veda, Rigvediya, Ajurvediya, Samavediya, Atharvediya. Mandukya Upanishad is Atharvediya. Taittiriya Samhita, Taittiriya Upanishad is Ajurveda, Samhita, Taittiriya Samhita. And it is like that explained in every Upanishad in the beginning. So the Upanishad comprises of questions and answers, usually, on profound issues. How this universe got created, what causes the mind to think, and how the self migrates from one body to the other. What happens after death? Is there a Ishvara or is there no Ishvara? How the creation came into existence? These kind of profound questions are raised in the Upanishads. They are so profound that no other texts have ever raised these questions. Not to speak of Bible and Quran. No other text exists in the whole world which has raised such fundamental questions, because answers will depend on the questions. Now, the entire Upanishads, they are running into around 108. I have this 108 original text. It's a thick book. And this is very rarely available. It's not available. Of course, Ramakrishna Math has published many books, 8 Upanishads, first volume, second volume. And some people have published 124 Upanishads, 111 Upanishads. Standard 108. Some fake Upanishads also exist. Like Allo Upanishad exists. It's a fake Upanishad. 108 are standard, which are coming from thousands of years. So ultimately, what is that Upanishads are trying to tell us? They are going to tell us about the ultimate truth. They are not interested in small things. They are not interested in how to get rain or how to get money. Those things they are not interested. They are interested in how this universe came into existence. And what will happen to the universe after finishing its tenure. And how human being came into existence. How my mind came into existence. What drives the thought process of mind? This kind of questions are asked and answered very successfully and correctly by the profound Vedic rishis of the order of Prabhu, Uddalaka, Nachiketa. I have been to some of those locations. I went to Uddalaka's ashram. Uddalaka is mentioned in the Kathopanishad. I have been to Bhrugu's place. Prabhu is the main actor in the Taittiriya Upanishad. So these are real events in history which have happened around 10,000 BC. And some of them are later, some of them are earlier. So the later ones have been attached to the Vedas much later. And what is very important is to understand the role of these 108 Upanishads. You will have to understand the evolution of spiritual knowledge, Vedic knowledge, scientific knowledge from the Vedas to the modern times. When I say modern times, I mean the Kali Yuga. Because in the beginning of Kali Yuga, at the end of Mahabharata war, after 80 years of war, Dwarka got submerged, Lord Krishna left this earth, and then the Kali Yuga started. And Parikshit and Janmejaya, all these people were there. And then the dynasty continued till the Mahapadmananda of the Nanda Empire before the Mauryan Empire, whose demolition was done by Chanakya, and the Mauryan Empire started. So this continuity of history is very clearly shown in the Puranas. Who came when and which king ruled over how many years, whose son was who, and all that. So after the Mauryan Empire, we had the I mean, after Ashoka and Harsha Empire and all that, then we had the Mughals and all these invasions. And then we had the British, and now we have independent India. So during the Kali Yuga, the beginning of Kali Yuga, the Puranas were compiled by our great Veda Vyasa Maharaj, who is behind us. I went to the place where he compiled and delivered. It's called Naimisharanya. Romaharshana actually delivered Suta. That's why Suta Purana Manta. Suta delivered. He was not a Brahmin, he was a charioteer, but he was equally respected. And Vyasa Pitham is there in Naimisharanyam, where 18 Puranas were authored by Vyasa. In addition to, of course, Mahabharata, he authored somewhere else. He authored it in the cave in Badrinath. I went there also. There is a cave in the end of India border, Mana village. There are two caves. One is Vyasa Guha and other is Ganesh Guha. There, Vyasa and Ganesh together produced Mahabharata. But in Naimisharanya, Vyasa delivered the Puranas. And these Puranas were delivered in a less common language, more common language of that time. That is normal language, like Hindi that time. That is classical Sanskrit. Whereas Vedas belong to a much earlier period of thousands of years earlier, which are in Vedic Sanskrit. So in the Puranas, he tried to convey and deliver the same wisdom and knowledge of science and spirituality, both from the Vedas to the common masses through Puranas. And Itihasa Puranabhyam Vedam Upabrumhitam. You shall reach and understand Vedas through the Puranas and Itihasas, because they are the stepping stones. Directly Veda you cannot understand anything. So the Mahabharata, which was compiled by Vyasa, originally it was called Jaya, only 10,000 slokas were there. Then it became multiplied. Finally, it became 1 lakh slokas. It was expanded by Vaishampayana and Ramaharshana and others. So Bhagavad Gita was there in the Mahabharata itself, Madhya Mahabharata. And Adi Shankaracharya's time, which is around 500 BC, all the 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita which we have today were in existence. But we don't know what was in existence before Vaishampayana or before Ramaharshana. In the original Vyasa's Bharata, Jayam it is called. In fact, the word Bharata itself is not there. Jayam. It is called Jayam. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narupam Devim Saraswatim Jayam Udiharte. He says, I am telling Jayam. That was very small. Maybe Bhagavad Gita was also in a condensed form at that time. We are not sure. But by the time of Adi Shankaracharya, the entire 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita and the entire Mahabharata must have been there, ready. So now the Upanishads, which were delivered much before Vyasa by Prabhu and others, they were summarized by Vyasa into Brahma Sutras first. Badarayana wrote Brahma Sutras as summary of the philosophical content, knowledge content, wisdom content of the Upanishads. And he also condensed and delivered into Bhagavad Gita, because it was a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. So that conversation comprised the same wisdom. So he has recorded 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita as we have it today, where the essence of the Upanishads was also delivered. So the essence of Upanishads was delivered by Vyasa himself in two ways. One is Brahma Sutras, other is Bhagavad Gita. Brahma Sutras are meant for scholars. Ordinary people cannot understand anything. Whereas Bhagavad Gita is not meant for scholars alone. It is meant for ordinary people. Anybody can understand. So Sarvo Upanishado Gavo Dogdha Gopalanandana Pardho Vatsa Sudhi Bhokta Dugdham Gita Mutam Mahat. There is a cow called Upanishads, and there is a cowboy called Krishna who is culling out the milk and giving to a calf called Arjuna, and that milk is nothing but Bhagavad Gita. So there is a avinabhava sambandham between Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads and Brahma Sutras. The Upanishads serve as a source of the Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads. I'm sorry, Brahma Sutras. The Upanishads serve as a source, original srota for Brahma Sutras as well as Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, the importance of Upanishads cannot be explained in words. It is Jnana Kanda of the entire Vedic lore, and it is a core knowledge and wisdom, spiritual wisdom, core philosophical wisdom, which became delivered through the Brahma Sutras as for scholars and through Bhagavad Gita for everyone. So we are very fortunate to try to understand the Upanishads. And before I start the Upanishads, I want to give you the philosophical perspective of Advaita, non-duality, oneness. So Advaita, as delivered by Adi Shankaracharya, is not his original thought. It was already there in the Upanishads, as very much articulated and delivered by his guru's guru, Gaudapada. In the Gaudapada Karika of Mandukya Upanishad, you will be amazed to see that the Mandukya Upanishad has been commented by Gaudapada, who is the guru of Adi Shankaracharya, as Gaudapada Karika, which contains exactly A to Z of Advaita, very clearly depicted. The same Advaita Adi Shankaracharya delivered with proof on arguments and defeated all intellectuals of his time, particularly Buddhist and Jain intellectuals who were extremely knowledgeable, extremely logical, and proof. They based everything on proof. And Adi Shankaracharya was such a great logician. He defeated the greatest logicians of his time in arguments of logic with proof, and established Advaita as the supreme doctrine of reality, the very sum and substance of the Vedas and the Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita and Brahma Sutras. With proof, he defeated all other arguments and all other models of science and philosophy and spirituality. By Buddha, Jaina, Charvaka, you name anyone, Kapalika, around 72 schools of religion were there, religion and science. They were all defeated. And therefore, he became Jagat Guru at Kashmir. There's a temple of Shankaracharya in Srinagar. I had been there. And Sharada Peetham in Kashmir, which is now defunct, but it's trying to be revived. It is part of Pakistan now. After having done that, having defeated everyone and established Advaita, he went around the whole country and established the 4 Shankar Mats. The Jyotish Mat in Joshi Mat on the way to Badrinath, I had been there for North India. And the Puri Mat at Puri, I had been there. Govardhan Mat is for East India. And Dwarka is for the West India. I had been there and met that Jagat Guru also. And for South India, it is Sringeri, Sharada Peetham. And he established the gurus in these 4 mats from the other end of the country. The head of Sringeri Sharada Peetham was Sureshwaracharya, who was none other than Mandal Mishra from Bihar. And vice versa in other places. He established the Nambudri Brahmin as the chief priest of Badrinath temple at Badri. So he created an integrated India and he established Kumbh Melas. And they are all continuing till today. The Shankar Mats continue. He has written a constitution bill called Matham Nayam, where he has given the names of the kingdoms which are reporting to that particular Shankaracharya, local regions. Actually, the kings were actually reporting under the control of that particular Shankaracharya Mat. And the law was implemented, Manusmriti was implemented by the kings. And those mats continue today, though they don't have control over the government anymore. And now, after having done all this, he went to Kanchi and stayed there for 3 years. And he established the Kanchi Kamakoti Peetham. where he established the Sri Chakram at the Kamakshi Devi, which is very close to the Shankara Mutt he has established, where he has developed the Shanmatas, that is 6 windows of Devatas, Shiva, Vishnu, Shakti, Ganapati, Kartikeya and Surya. And therefore, he was known as Shanmata Sthapanacharya. He has established these Shanmatas validity through Advaita only. You can approach Advaita through Shaiva Upasana or Vishnu Upasana, or through Shakti Upasana, or through Ganapati Upasana, or through Kartikeya Upasana, or through Surya Upasana. Because these are all windows of Devatas. Basic Devatas, even we know already, Surya was also a basic Devata in the Veda. But here we have advanced Devatas, like most advanced, Shiva, Vishnu, Shakti. They are the Devanam Deva, Adi Deva, Mahadeva. And so these 6 Shanmata Sthapanacharya, and that's why this is known as Sarvajna Peetham. So Kanchi Kamakoti Peetham is the 5th Peetham, because it's not a regional Peetham. Those other 4 are only regional Peethams. So that's why Kanchi Kamakoti Peetham assumes great importance. As you know, it continues a very strong way till today, and all these Shankaracharya Matts are continuing. Some of them may be weak, some of them may be strong, but they continue for thousands of years, from 500 BC till today, without break. Now, coming to the Advaita in the context of science, modern physics, I'll take 5 minutes. Those of you who studied physics, I'm sure all of you studied physics. So we have 2 physics. One is classical physics, other is modern physics. In classical physics, Newtonian physics, based on which mechanical engineering and all other functions of machines work. There are 4 fundamental entities: matter, energy, space, and time. 4. So now, everything in this world which you see is matter. It contains particles, atoms. Then forms of energy, light, heat, electricity, and so on. And we know that matter can neither be created nor destroyed. In chemical reactions, it will be transformed from one form to the other. And energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Law of conservation of energy, law of conservation of matter. And we have space and time also as absolute entities in classical physics. The macro level of physical objects follow the laws of gravitation, laws of motion, which are known as Newton's laws. And they follow the classical mechanics. Mechanical engineering and all these departments are based on civil engineering, based on classical mechanics, which is based on classical physics, comprising of matter, energy, space, and time. But in 1950s, the problem became very serious that when you go to the subatomic level, the classical physics principles will not apply. Laws of motion, laws of gravitation don't work in subatomic level. So quantum physics was born. Max Planck gave the theory of quantum. A quanta jump and quanta in the orbits of electrons, higher level, lower level, and chemical reactions could be explained with the combination of electrons from one element to the other by jumping to the bands. So he gave the quantum theory that energy is in quanta, like light energy is in quanta of photons and so on. Then came relativity by Einstein. He gave special theory of relativity and general theory of relativity. Because in the super macro level, the quantum physics mechanisms don't work. When you talk of the astronomical, cosmological phenomena, basic classical physics will not work, nor the basic quantum physics will work, quantum electrodynamics. So he had to bring relativistic physics. The special theory of relativity, which is relativistic physics, proves that space and time are relative, not absolute. Both space and time and also mass will change with the speed of the observer. Relatively, speed of the observer. If we take v as the velocity Like right now we are all on Earth, so our speed or our velocity is same as velocity of Earth. But if you go in a rocket at a higher speed, say half of velocity of light, velocity of light is the upper limit of all possible velocities. It is known by C. C stands for 3 into 10 to the power of 8 meters per second. So he gave, with a lot of research done, and also with certain ideas he got from the Upanishads, because he himself was a Sanskrit scholar. He spoke in Sanskrit with Rabindranath Tagore. I'm talking of Einstein. He got some intuitive ideas from the Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita, and then he put into relativity theory mathematical terms. And he proved that space and time and mass change with velocity of the observer by the factor of root of 1 minus v square by c square. V is the velocity of the observer and c is velocity of light. As v tends to c, this root of 1 minus v square by c square tends to 0, because v square by c square tends to 1, and 1 minus 1 is 0, and root of 0 is 0. So as v is a fraction of c approaching c in limit, so this root of 1 minus v square by c square also diminishes to approaches 0. So when v is equal to c, it is 0. That means you have no space and no time. And v is close to c, then your velocity, your time and space get dilated, reduced to very, very low levels. That means if you travel at 90% velocity of light, your space and your time are 90% or even more reduced, given by the root of 1 minus v square by c square. And if you travel at velocity greater than velocity of light, then it will become root of a negative number, imaginary. Complex numbers, imaginary, the square of it is negative. So this special theory of relativity was proven by taking atomic clocks which are able to measure time to the power of 10 to the power of minus 9 picoseconds, and with high-speed jet aircrafts. With that speed, the proportionate reduction in space and time, dilation of space and time, was confirmed. And so also, of course, mass they could not confirm, but in cosmic rays, mass increases by velocity. So in fact, this gave rise to effects like the twin paradox. That is, two twins, identical age. One of them takes a spacecraft at a very high velocity and goes into outer space and comes back after some time. His time was different, whereas the time on Earth was different. So both the twins will not be identical when they come back. And this principle is also explained in the Harivamsha for the Balarama's marriage with Revati. Revati's father was not able to find a match for his daughter. So he had gone all the way to Brahmalokam in spaceships. And by the time he went and came back, many thousands of years passed on Earth. So Brahma tells him there, by the time you go back, her husband will be ready for you. That is Balarama. So this time dilation, twin paradox, all these things are in relativity. And then this general theory of relativity, extended special theory of relativity into general theory of relativity. Entire relativity is based on tensor analysis. By giving the equation E is equal to mc square, where E and m, energy and matter, are shown to be interconvertible. If you convert 1 gram of mass, it will become 1 E is equal to m is equal to 1 into c square, 3 into 10 to the power of 8 square, that is 9 into 10 to the power of 16 joules, that is watts, will be the energy. You can imagine the huge amount of energy. If you transform 1 gram of matter into energy, you can eliminate many cities. That much is the atom bomb's power. That's how atom bomb works. Atom bomb has been proven in Hiroshima first, and even India had done atomic explosions. It's all proven. Why I'm telling all this is E is equal to mc square, and before that, the special theory of relativity dismissing the absoluteness of space and time. They are nothing but Advaita. I wrote a paper in the 70s that what is final truth? What is the essence of existence? If you ask, space and time cannot exist, because if you travel at velocity of light, your space is gone, your time is gone, that's zero. But even then, matter and energy exist, and E is equal to mc square shows that matter and energy are interconvertible, That means there is some X, you can say, which becomes matter or which becomes energy in different forms, depending on the observer. If you observe with photoelectric effect experiment, then light appears as photons. If you observe as a diffraction experiment, light as waves. Similarly, X-ray, similarly, electrons, neutrons. Depending on the observer, you can see them as energy or as matter, either particles or wave. So what is a reality? What is there actually? There is some X we don't know, which will appear as particles or as waves, depending on the observer's observation, velocity, and observation equipment. So in other words, there is some X Brahman, which manifests as matter and energy in different forms, depending on the observer. So that X is Brahman, that is Advaita. There is only truth, only one truth. So that is what I wrote my paper in 70s. So that is called Brahman in Sanskrit, in Upanishads, in Advaita. One without a second. Ekameva Advitiyam Brahma. Neha Nanasti Kinchan. All the multiplicity doesn't exist. Multiplicity appears to exist. And that is because of Maya. Maya means something which appears to exist, but actually doesn't exist. So actually what exists is only that X, which appears to exist in different forms of matter and different forms of energy. But actually all these are relative to the observer. So this is Maya explanation and Advaita explanation. This was very essential to give because the bridge between physics and philosophy is here. And this has been acknowledged by many, many people, not only Indians, but many German scientists have written books on this. Niels Bohr and Robert Oppenheimer and Einstein and Schrodinger. Schrodinger, in fact, gave his equation, Schrodinger's wave equation. Rho square chi by dou square and so on, where he himself mentions that chi is representing Maya, because that chi is taking assuming various roles. So he knew what is Maya, what is Advaita. In fact, Oppenheimer quoted Bhagavad Gita when he blasted Hiroshima with atom bomb. Divi Surya Sahasrasya Bhaved Yugapaduthita Yadivas Adrishis Cheva Syad Bhasastasya Mahatma. As if 1000 suns burst at the same time. That is how the light came in the atomic explosion. So all these people were well versed in Vedanta, in Upanishads. They learned Sanskrit in their school itself. I'm talking of Germans. And among Indians, E.C.J. Sudarshan was there who used some of these concepts. And now we have Subhash Kak, who used these concepts. He has written books. So I'm not telling anything out of the way, totally new. It's all well understood by all the people in Helm of Affairs, and books have been written. The Tao of Physics, one book is there. So many things have happened. So what I'm telling is only a summary of what is there. So this Advaita is reflected in the Upanishads, which is brought out by Adi Shankaracharya later. Now I will go into the Upanishads themselves. We will start with Isha Upanishad. Of course, the Advaita, what picture which I gave you from physics perspective, is for the existence, the universe. Then there is also the psychological perspective or the self, nature of self. Who am I? Because in the quantum physics and in relativity also, we have the observer playing a very major role. The observer means the equipment with which he is observing, the experiment with which he is performing, and also an intelligent entity, intelligent being, spark of intelligence, consciousness. If it doesn't exist, he cannot observe anything, whatever be the equipment. So there is a role of an observer, which is consciousness. So quantum physics has accepted consciousness as fundamental reality. So depending on the observer, everything is happening. So the consciousness, or chit in Sanskrit, is addressed in Yoga Shastra and in the Upanishads as Atman, self. What is it? So we have talked of existence of universe as Sat, and this individual self or observer as Chit. And Sat Chit Ananda, the experience of that is total bliss, is the nature of supreme being or divinity or truth. This is what Ramakrishna Paramahamsa also told. This one word, if you want to tell the entire thing, Satchidananda is right. That is Om. So in the Upanishads, we get all these different perspectives in one after the other Upanishads. We will cover in the next few days a few Upanishads, and the rest I will leave it to you to cover in your own time and space, in your own leisure. Today we will cover the smallest, the first Upanishad called Isha Upanishad or Ishavasya Upanishad. It starts with a profound Shanti mantra. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. It's a very perplexing statement. It says that is total, Purna, and this is total. And this total comes from that total. And having come also, that total remains total. That is infinity, this is infinity. Even though this infinity came from that infinity remains unaffected as infinity. It's not infinity minus infinity is zero. It is 0 minus 0 is equal to Purna. That means it's talking of something which is total, which is infinite, which is perfect, Purnam. And it's talking of another thing which is also perfect and is also infinite and total. And this came out of that, and having come out also, that remains same. So in my interpretation, that Purnam is nothing but Brahman or X. And this Purnam is this universe, that is matter and energy, manifestation, different forms. And having come out of this, still that remains that, because this has not come out independently. It is just a manifestation through Maya. Actually, it is the same thing. So 0 minus 0 is 0. And the Shanti 3 times, because it reflects to peace requirement in 3 levels. Adhibhautika, Adhidevika, and Adhyatmika. Adhibhautika is the physical level. Adhidevika is natural or universal level. And Adhyatmika is internal, psychological or self-consciousness level. Now, Adi Shankaracharya wrote elaborate commentaries, which are explained in English by Ramakrishna Math. You can see these books. This is a book which I am using. I'm not going to give you any notes. You can use this book. It's better you get this book. So the first mantra of the Ishavasya Upanishad says, Ishavasyamidam sarvam yat kinchit jagatyam jagat tena chaktena bhunjiyam ma grudhakkasya. Om Ishavasyamidam sarvam yat kinchit jagatyam jagat tena chaktena bhunjidha ma grudhakkasya siddhanam. All this, idam sarvam, that means this whole universe. Ishavasyam is spread, manifested, pervaded by Brahman. Isha, Ishvara, Brahman, all are synonymous. In English, the word God, if you use, it will be incomplete and inaccurate, but we have no choice. So we will use only Sanskrit words. This whole universe is manifestation, pervasion of Isha. Same thing which I told you just now. Purnavada Purnamidam. Purnat Purnamudachyate. Purnasya Purnamadaya. Purnameva Vasishyate. So this universe which appears to exist differently to different observers is pervaded by Isha. Pervaded means made of, comprising of, composing of, constituent of. All this is a constituent of the same Brahman, Isha. Therefore, my friend, don't think it belongs to you. If you think that this earth belongs to me, this air belongs to me, this water belongs to me, all people like my friend in Kolkata, if they think that the ocean and Ganga river, all that belong to them. There cannot be anything greater joke than that. Because the whole nature doesn't belong to anybody. It belongs to the Lord, Isha. Ishavasyam idam sarvam avasyam. It is resident. The Brahman, Isha, is resident in the entire universe. That kinchit jagatyam jagat, even the smallest. The Veda also says, Echa kinchit jagat sarvam drishyate shruyate piva. Whatever little you can think or see or hear or cannot think, cannot see, cannot hear also. Antar bahischa, inside, outside. Vyapya Narayana sthitaha. Without any gaps and holes. Narayana is spread and is there, existing. He is resident. Ishavasyamidam sarvam. Isha is resident in all this jagat. Kinchit jagatyam jagat. The entire jagat, the universe, whatever little in it. Everything spread, pervaded by Isha, Ishvara, Tena Chaktena Bunjida, Magrudha Kasyaka Dhinam. Protect yourself through that detachment. Do not covet anybody's wealth. The moment you realize that, then you realize that nothing belongs to you. So when nothing belongs to you as an individual, ego, then how can you grab it from somebody else? So, Magrudha Kasya Pinthanam. Do not covet for whose is wealth, because this entire wealth of nature is whose, is not yours. Water, air, earth, nature, trees, everything. It is not yours. You cannot grab for yourself from others. It is a delusion that people think this belongs to him, this belongs to him, and so on. It's like a train seat. You know, when you catch a train, you have a reservation for a seat. This is my seat, you won't fight. And you sit on it or you sleep on it. Till when? Till you go. After that, it is not yours. Somebody else will say, it's mine. So it is no better than that. The land and air and water and earth doesn't belong to us. Kurvanneveha karmani jijive chivaksama evam tvai nanyathe dosti nakarma lipyate nare. Of course, on each of these mantras, they are not slokas because they are from the Veda. They are mantras. They are given elaborate commentary by Adi Shankaracharya. It is given in these books. I don't want to go into every single word of those commentaries because it will be very complicated and time consuming. We don't have much time. Then the question arises, if nothing belongs to you, then what you should be doing? To commit suicide? No. Because if you commit suicide, you will become a devil, nothing more than a ghost. Kurvanneha karmani jijive chitraksamaha. You shall perform all actions, karma. Of course, assuming you know what is your karma and what is your dharma. Karma based on dharma, your duties, your responsibilities, what you are meant to do. Like I am now giving a lecture, it is my dharma and my karma. I have to do it perfectly. If I don't do it perfectly, I'll be failing. If I don't deliver you, convey to you the knowledge which I am aiming to convey, then I am failure. Kurvanneha karmani jijivesha ichchata sama. All the life activities, by doing karma, indeed should one with live here for 100 years. For a man such as you, there is no way other than this, whereby karma may not bring. The karma yoga, which Lord Krishna elaborated in 3rd chapter, how to perform without obsession, without attachment, without bonding, without a bandha. Chaktva karma phala sangam nityatrupto nirashrayah karmanya abhipravritto pi naiva kinchit karoti saha. A person who performs all actions without obsession, without attachment to the result, but only for the perfection of doing it. sake of doing it. You will not be bound by the results of that karma. Otherwise, we are all bound by our karma. Today, we are sitting here and talking and discussing this topic because there is a cause for it before this. And before that cause, there's another cause. There's a chain of cause and effect, reasons why you are doing this particular action. And every action will bind you, will create an impact, will create a habit, will create a reaction. And you will be doing it again, or maybe doing more. Suppose I come and hit you, then immediately you will hit me back. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So every karma is a binding karma. But karma yoga is a technique which is elaborated by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 3rd chapter and 4th chapter and 5th chapter. That even though you do, you will not be affected by it. It is to understand the maturity level. Like you are an adult, you are in an apartment complex, you go to the parking lot and all the kids are playing cricket. If you also play cricket with them, you will take it as a game, as a sport. You will not be affected much. Supposing you lost in the cricket game, you will not start weeping like that child there. Whereas that child will weep. If he lost the game, then he will weep. Whereas adult will not weep. In the same way, a mature actor like Krishna, he performed a big war, world war. He was not affected. He just do it for doing sake, for perfection, for dharma, for loka sangraha, for society purpose, not for himself. So kurvarneheva karmani jijiveshe chitakrama samaha evam tvai nanyarethosthi na karma na lipyate nare. So there is no other way than this by which the karma will not cling you to you. So the karma yoga concept is first referred in the Ishavasya Upanishad and not Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is only elaborating it, and Lord Krishna has practiced it, implemented it. Whereas the first concept is in the Ishavasya Upanishad. Asurya namate loka andhena tamasavrata tam ste prech abhigachanti yekche atmahano jana. Now he is referring to Drishti. He is referring to the present day affairs. If you look at the TV or newspaper, you'll find the same thing which is described here. Atmahano jana. Self-destructing, self-destroying people. They go into darkness. They go into levels of darkness. Andhena tamasavrita. Asurya namate loka. Andhena tamasavrita. Tam ste pratyabhigachanti. Yekecha atmahano jana. Those words of devils are covered by blinding darkness. Those people that kill the self go there after giving up this body. So what will happen to a person who doesn't get spiritual enlightenment, who does all wrong things, adharma? He will go to hell. There's no doubt about it. So if you perform papa karma, you will go to hell. If you perform punya karma, you will go to heaven after death. So he is explaining this Atmahanoj, self-destructive people. What all is happening in Ukraine war? Threat of a third world war. What all is happening in India on every silly thing, there is a fight. You know, we have fights in universities like JNTU on EC and CSC. They brought a law one day that those who did BTech in CSC alone should do MTech in CSC. Whereas there are 90% of the people who did MTech in CSC were having done BTech in EC. What is the difference between EC and CSC? Only some 2 or 3 courses. But then they'll have a big fight on it. Whether to open the walls of Taj Mahal, doors of Taj Mahal or not, there's a big fight on it. It's a kind of a madness is prevailing, describing that kind of Atmahano Jana, self-destructive people. All our modern society is like this. Anejata kamme kam maraso javimone nena deva apnuan purvamarshat tadhavato anyan Antyeti tishtan tasmin apo matarishwa tada.
How long you may take, Prabhu Garu?
How much time we have?
We have already crossed the time, but
5 minutes more. So now he is explaining the nature of the self. Tadejati tannejati tadure tadvantike tadantarascha sarvasya bhusas sarvataha. I don't think I'll be able to complete this Ishavasya Upanishad today. I'll continue tomorrow. It's very profound statements are there. I'll stop at mantra number 5, which is nature of the self. Tadejati tannejati tadure tadvantike tadantarascha sarvasya tadupusa sarvasyasya bhahyatah. Now, having explained that it is all spread, Brahman is all spread, Isha is all spread. Now he's explaining the nature of that is also the self. It moves and it doesn't move. Tadejati tannayati tadure tadvantike. It is far, it is near. Tadantarascha bahischa. It is inside and outside, and it is everywhere. So the nature of the self, nature of Ishvara has been explained. It will be explained more. Each mantra here is very profound. People have written big commentaries on each. It is very difficult to understand some of these words, but still we get a central idea. In the Shankaracharya Upanishad, he has given elaborate debates at the end of the last mantra with all kinds of objections and assurances. So I will stop here. I'll continue tomorrow. I'll start with the Shanti mantra. Om Apyayantu mamangani Vak Prana Chakshu Srotra Madho Balam Indriyani cha Sarvani Sarvam Brahmopanishadam Maham Brahma Nirakuryam Mama Brahma Nirakarota Nirakaranamasva Nirakaranam Me astu tadatmani nirate Ya Upanishatsu Dharmaste Mayi Santu Te Mayi Santu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
okay. Let us have now Janaganamana and close.
No.
Yeah.
Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kachchit dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sahana vavatu sahanau bhunaktu saha viryankaravavahai tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Satyam vada dharmanchara sarve janaah sukhino bhavantu. Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Janaganamana. जनगणमन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंधु गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल वंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्छल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष माहे गाहे तव जय गाथा जनगण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे जय हिंद जय हिंद जय हिंद जय श्री राम जय श्री राम